A poor woman spent a night with the cold CEO, and he vanished. 5 years later, Quadruplets stopped his limousine shouting, "Daddy!" The grocery store was packed that Saturday morning. Rachel adjusted the straps of her bags on her shoulders, feeling the weight of the week's groceries. 4 years raising 4 children alone had turned every simple task into an endurance marathon. "Reed, don't run so fast," she called out to the dark-haired boy darting through the people on the sidewalk. "Jude, hold Toby's hand." "Nolan, come here." 4 small voices answered at once, creating a chaotic symphony she knew by heart. Reed stopped for 2 seconds before running off again. Jude took his younger brother's hand but quickly let go to point at something in a shop window. Toby started crying because he wanted a toy. Nolan, the quietest, simply ignored the call and kept watching the passing cars. Rachel sighed. 4 years, 4 boys, 1 woman. The bills never quite balanced, but she always found a way. Her feet ached from the double shift at the diner the night before. Working as a waitress was far from a dream job, but it paid the rent for their small apartment and put food on the table. Sometimes, "Come on, everyone. Time to head home," she said, trying to gather her small army. It was then that the black limousine pulled up right in front of them. The engine purred low before silencing completely. The windows were tinted dark, impossible to see through. The car was long, gleaming, the kind that made people stop on the street to stare, and the children stopped. Reed, who never stayed still, froze in the middle of the sidewalk. Jude let go of Toby's hand and widened his eyes. Toby stopped crying instantly. Nolan, for the first time in weeks, paid attention to something that wasn't a cartoon or a toy. Rachel felt a shiver run down her spine. The back door opened. An Italian leather shoe touched the asphalt first, then perfectly pressed trousers. Next, a man stepped out of the car with the elegance of someone accustomed to being watched. Dark suit, impeccable haircut, upright posture. He adjusted his shirt cuffs and closed the limousine door without even looking back, as if he knew the driver would wait as long as necessary. Cole Richardson was not the type of man who went unnoticed, nor was he the type who cared who was watching him. But when he looked up and saw 4 small boys staring directly at him, something strange happened. It wasn't recognition, it wasn't affection, it was more like a momentary disturbance in his perfectly controlled routine, and then Reed shouted, "Daddy!" The word echoed clearly on the busy sidewalk. Cole blinked once. His expression didn't change. "Daddy!" Jude repeated and started running towards him. "Daddy, Daddy!" Toby yelled too, stumbling over his own feet to catch up with his brothers. Even Nolan, the silent one, murmured softly, "Daddy!" And suddenly Cole was surrounded by 4 small children, all talking at once, all looking at him as if he were the answer to some important question. He stood completely still. Reed reached him first and hugged his leg tightly. Jude did the same on the other side. Toby tried to climb into his arms, and Nolan simply stood nearby, looking up at him with big, hopeful eyes. Cole looked down with the same interest he'd dedicate to a particularly tedious financial presentation. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice came out cold, cutting. "Do I know you?" The children stopped talking instantly. Reed slowly released his leg, confused. Jude took a step back, the smile disappearing from his face. Toby stopped trying to climb him and looked up with tearful eyes. Nolan simply bowed his head. Cole looked over their small heads and saw a woman standing a few feet away. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, plain and visibly worn clothes, heavy bags in her arms. She was looking at him with a mix of sadness and something that looked like contained anger. Her face sparked no memory, just another irrelevant person in his day. "Come here, boys," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Leave the gentleman alone." "But, Mommy," Reed began to protest, still looking at Cole with hope. "Now," she said, more firmly. The children reluctantly obeyed, walking back to their mother. But they kept looking at Cole over their shoulders, as if expecting him to change his mind about knowing them. Cole didn't change his mind about anything. He stood there, observing with the same neutral expression as the woman gathered her children and groceries. She didn't look at him again. She simply took 2 of the children's hands and started walking. "Come on, everyone, let's go home." and they left. Cole was left alone on the sidewalk, beside his limousine, wearing a suit that cost more than most people earned in a month. A successful executive, owner of a multi-million-dollar company, a man who made decisions affecting hundreds of employees every day. And he had just been called daddy by 4 children he was absolutely certain he had never seen in his life. He should have gotten into the car and continued his day. He should have forgotten the incident completely. He should have treated it as just another insignificant interruption in his schedule, but he couldn't. Because when he looked at those boys, for a few disturbing seconds, it was as if he was looking at old photographs of himself. Cole got into the limousine and closed the door harder than necessary. "Office seat," he told the driver, his voice even drier than usual. James, who had driven for him for 3 years, knew his boss well enough not to ask questions when he was clearly annoyed. He just nodded and started the engine. During the drive, Cole tried to focus on the emails on his phone. There were 15 urgent messages, 2 conferences to confirm, and a multi-million-dollar contract awaiting his review. But every time he looked at the screen, he saw 4 pairs of small eyes that were disturbingly familiar. The first boy had his exact eyes, the same color, the same intensity. The second had the same face shape Cole saw in the mirror every day. The third, though obviously younger, had the same determined stubbornness Cole recognized in himself. And the fourth, the silent observer, had that way of studying people that was identical to how Cole operated in business meetings. It was impossible not to notice, but Cole Richardson didn't make decisions based on physical coincidences. He dealt with facts, numbers, concrete evidence, and unknown children calling him daddy definitely didn't fit into any logical category of his perfectly organized life. At the office, Cole tried to dive into work with his usual efficiency, meeting with the marketing team at 10, budget review at 11:30, conference with Japanese investors at noon. His schedule was packed, as always, and he had a reputation for being relentlessly results-driven. But the marketing meeting dragged on because he got distracted 3 times. The budget review had to be postponed because he couldn't focus on the numbers. And during the international conference, he found himself thinking about dark hair and small smiles instead of stock holdings. This was unacceptable. Cole Richardson never got distracted, never lost focus, never let personal matters interfere with business, mainly because he had no personal matters to interfere. At 4 in the afternoon, after cancelling 2 more meetings due to lack of concentration, he did something he never did. He called his private investigator. "Marcus, I need information on someone." "Of course, Mr. Richardson. Who is it?" Cole hesitated for a second. It was ridiculous to investigate a complete stranger just because random children had mistaken him for someone else. But those eyes. A woman named Rachel Thompson, mother of 4 boys. Works as a waitress somewhere downtown. Any specific information you need? Everything, full background. Understood. How long do I have? 48 hours. Cole hung up without saying goodbye, as he always did. Then he sat in his executive chair, looking out the 30th floor window, trying to understand why he was investigating a woman he didn't know because of children who were definitely not his problem. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of unsuccessful meetings and postponed decisions. Sarah, his assistant, noticed something was wrong. In 5 years working for him, she had never seen Cole so distracted. "Mr. Richardson," she asked at 6 in the evening, appearing at his office door. "The driver is waiting, and you have dinner with the partners from Henderson and Associates at 8. Cole looked at her as if he didn't understand the words. "Dinner with Henderson and Associates. To discuss the merger you've been negotiating for 3 months. The merger, right. A $50 million deal he had been meticulously planning, and he had completely forgotten. "Cancel it," he said. Sarah blinked. "Sir." "Cancel dinner, reschedule for next week." "But sir, they flew in from Chicago specifically for this meeting. And you said it was top priority." "I said cancel," Cole repeated, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Sarah recoiled. "Of course, Mr. Richardson. I'll call them now." She left quickly, closing the door behind her. Cole was left alone in the silent office. For the first time in years, he had cancelled an important engagement without a valid business reason. For the first time in years, he couldn't focus on work. For the first time in years, something was disturbing his perfectly controlled routine, and all because of 4 children who had looked at him as if he were important to them. Cole left the office at 8 in the evening, 2 hours earlier than usual. James was waiting with the limousine, as always. "Home, Mr. Richardson." Cole hesitated. Normally, yes. His penthouse apartment in one of the city's most expensive buildings. Silent, organized, perfect. But today, the idea of being alone with his thoughts didn't seem appealing. "Drive," he said. "Anywhere." James knew his boss well enough not to ask questions. He just started driving through the city streets. Cole leaned back in the leather seat, watching the lights pass by the window. Pedestrians walking home after work, families dining in restaurants, couples chatting in cafes. Normal life. Life he had never desired or considered important. But today, seeing all these people living their ordinary lives, he wondered what it would be like. What would it be like to have someone waiting for him at home? What would it be like to have dinner with a family instead of eating alone while reading financial reports? What would it be like to care about someone other than himself and his company? What would it be like if those 4 boys were truly his children? The thought struck him out of nowhere, and he pushed it away immediately. Cole Richardson was not the type of man who wanted a family, never had been. Personal commitments were unnecessary complications that interfered with focus and efficiency. He had built his entire life around that philosophy. So why couldn't he stop thinking about 4 pairs of small eyes that were exactly like his? The next morning, Cole arrived at the office earlier than usual, determined to get back to normal. He reviewed contracts, approved budgets, participated in video conferences, made important decisions with his usual efficiency. For a few hours, he almost managed to forget the incident of the previous day, until Sarah entered his office at 11 in the morning with a strange expression. "Mr. Richardson, a Marcus Henderson is on the line. He said you're expecting his call." Marcus, the investigator. Cole felt something stir in his stomach. "Put him through." Sarah transferred the call and left, closing the door. "Marcus." "Mr. Richardson, I have the information you requested about Rachel Thompson." Cole mentally prepared himself, as he did before any important meeting. "Proceed." Rachel Thompson, 28 years old, single, mother of 4-year-old quadruplets, Reed, Rouse, Jude, Toby, and Nolan Thompson. Works as a waitress at Danny's Diner for 3 years, takes double shifts whenever possible, lives in a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. Cole listened without commenting, absorbing the information like financial data. Financial situation. Precarious. Lives on minimum wage plus tips, always late on rent but always manages to pay. No criminal record, no known addictions. From reports, she's a dedicated mother doing her best to support her children alone. And the children's father, unknown. She never revealed his identity to anyone, not even at the hospital when they were born. Cole was silent for a moment. "Anything else?" She attended Columbia University 5 years ago, studying literature, dropped out in her 2nd year. The date coincides exactly with her pregnancy. 5 years. The timeline was interesting. "That's all for now, Marcus. Thank you." Cole hung up and stared at the phone. 4-year-old quadruplets. Single mother who dropped out of college 5 years ago. Unknown father. And 4 boys who had his exact eyes, his face, his mannerisms. Cole didn't believe in coincidences, but he also didn't believe in jumping to conclusions without solid evidence, which meant he needed more information, and he knew exactly where to get it. Cole spent the rest of the day trying to work, but his mind was elsewhere. At 5 in the afternoon, he made a decision. "Sarah," he called, "cancel everything tomorrow morning. I have some matters to resolve." Sarah looked at him in surprise. Twice in 2 days was completely unprecedented. "Of course, Mr. Richardson, may I ask if you'll need anything?" "No." "And Sarah?" "Yes, sir. If anyone asks where I am, say I'm in external meetings. Nothing more." "Understood." Cole grabbed his coat and left the office, ignoring his assistant's curious gaze. For the 2nd time in 2 days, Cole Richardson had something more urgent to do than work. And this time he was going to get the answers he needed. Because if there was one thing Cole knew how to do better than anything else, it was to uncover the truth, even when that truth had the potential to change his life completely. Cole parked the limousine in front of Danny's diner at 5 in the afternoon, the same time Rachel had left the previous days according to Marcus's report. He waited. Not that he would admit to himself that he was waiting for her specifically. It was merely a matter of efficiency, resolving pending matters at the most convenient time. The parking lot was full of old, dented cars. His vehicle stood out like a glistening black stain amidst the mediocrity. Cole didn't care about the attention he was attracting. He never did. At exactly 5:15, the back door of the diner opened. Rachel appeared, wearing the same faded pink uniform she had worn the day before. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a few strands escaping around her face. She looked tired, but walked with determination. When she saw him, she stopped. To be more precise, she saw the black limousine and her shoulders immediately stiffened. For a moment, Cole thought she would turn back and re-enter the diner, but she didn't. Instead, she walked directly to the car with firm, determined steps. There was something in her posture that made Cole get out of the vehicle and wait for her on the sidewalk. "What do you want?" she asked bluntly, stopping a meter away from him. Cole appreciated the direct approach. He had no patience for empty conversations. "To talk." About 4 children who think they know me." Rachel laughed, but it was a dry, humorless sound. "They don't think... They know? How can they know if I don't?" She studied him for a moment, and Cole had the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated. It wasn't a feeling he liked. Cole Richardson was the one who evaluated others, not the other way around. "You really don't remember me, do you?" "Should I?" 5 years ago, Cole... Rooftop party at the Harrison Building in Manhattan. Cole maintained his neutral expression, but internally something stirred. He vaguely remembered that party. It had been important for business, an opportunity to impress Japanese investors who were considering a multi-million-dollar partnership. "Go on." Rachel looked around. The Danny's Diner parking lot wasn't exactly the ideal place for an important conversation, but apparently she had decided it would do. "I was working the party, freelance waitressing to pay for college. Literature at Columbia, 2nd year." Cole processed the information as he always did. Literature, expensive university, freelance waitress to pay the bills. Typical profile of a struggling middle-class young woman. And, "You were there with some investors, trying to close a deal. I remember because you seemed important. Everyone wanted to talk to you, but you were different." "Different how?" "Drunk. Very drunk. And a little lost." Cole frowned. He rarely drank at business events. Control was paramount in any professional situation. "That doesn't sound like me." "It isn't. That's why I noticed you were in a corner of the rooftop, alone, looking out at the city. Everyone else was trying to get your attention, but you ignored them, and you decided to approach me. You called out to me. I was on my break, taking off my shoes because my feet were killing me. You appeared and asked if I knew what it was like to feel invisible in a crowd." The words struck something in Cole's memory, vague, distant, but present. 5 years ago had been a particularly difficult period. The company was growing rapidly, but he was facing a professional identity crisis. What exactly did I say? Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, as if reliving the scene. "You said you were tired of people who only talked to you because of your money, that you wanted to talk to someone who didn't know who you were or what you were worth." That sounded familiar, uncomfortably familiar. Continue. "We talked for about 20 minutes. You told me you were going through a tough time. Company problems, investor pressure, working 20 hours a day. You said you couldn't remember the last time you'd slept a full night or done something just because you wanted to." The words were awakening memories Cole had buried deeply. 5 years ago, he had been on the verge of a nervous breakdown, working himself to near collapse, making million-dollar decisions while running on 3 hours of sleep a night. "I don't remember you," he said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. "Of course not. I was just a college waitress. Insignificant." There was bitterness in her voice, but also a resignation that made something stir in Cole's chest. "What happened next?" Rachel sighed and looked up at the sky, which was beginning to darken. You invited me for a drink after the party. You said you didn't want to go home alone, that you were tired of always being alone. Cole shifted uncomfortably. That definitely didn't sound like him. He always preferred to be alone. Solitude meant control, and control meant security. You accepted. I should have said no, but you seemed genuinely lost, and I was young and foolish and thought I could help. Help how? By being someone normal, someone who didn't want anything from you except company, someone who didn't know or care about your net worth. Cole processed the information as he did with any business report, objectively, analytically. But there was something different this time, something personal he couldn't adequately categorize. Where did we go? Your apartment. You said you had a $1,000 bottle of wine you were saving for a special occasion, but that there was never a special occasion because you had no one to share it with. That definitely sounded familiar. Cole still had several such bottles, gifts from important clients that he had never opened because there was no one to share them with. We talked all night, Rachel continued, her voice growing softer. You told me about your childhood, how you grew up without a father, how your mother worked 3 jobs to support you, how you swore you'd never be poor again. Cole stiffened. He never talked about his childhood with anyone. It was a forbidden topic, even to himself. You told me how you built the company from nothing, how you didn't trust anyone because everyone always wanted something from you, how lonely you felt at the top. The words were bringing back fragments of memory, not clear images but sensations, the memory of feeling understood by someone, the strange experience of talking to a person who listened without wanting anything in return. And then one thing led to another. You were lonely. I was impressed by the vulnerability you were showing. We were both drunk and... So it happened. The truth was beginning to form in Cole's mind like pieces of a puzzle he had chosen to ignore for 5 years. And in the morning, Rachel looked directly at him, and there was a hardness in her eyes that wasn't there before. In the morning you were gone. No note, no phone number, nothing, as if I had never existed. As if the whole night had been a dream. Cole vaguely remembered waking up in his own apartment the next morning with a terrible hangover and the feeling that he had made a mistake. He had decided that mixing alcohol with business was a bad idea and shouldn't be repeated. He began, but didn't know how to finish. You what? Forgot? Thought it wasn't important. Decided a college waitress wasn't even worth a goodbye note. There was pain in her voice now, pain that had been buried for 5 years, but was still there, alive and throbbing. How long after did you find out? 6 weeks. I started feeling sick and thought it was the flu. I was in the middle of final exams, working 2 jobs, sleeping 3 hours a night. When I finally went to the doctor because I couldn't stop throwing up, she paused, as if it was still hard to believe. Quadruplets. 4 babies. The doctor had to repeat it 3 times before I understood. Cole felt something cold run down his spine. 4 babies. 4 children who were now 4 years old and had eyes exactly like his. Are you absolutely sure they're mine? Rachel looked at him as if he had asked if gravity existed. You were the only man I was with during that period. Or ever, to be completely honest. I wasn't exactly experienced in casual relationships. Why did you never look for me? The question came out harsher than Cole intended, but he needed to know. For what, Cole? To hear you didn't remember me. To be treated as just another inconvenient problem in your perfect life. To be bought off with a check to keep quiet. Cole didn't answer immediately. He was processing, calculating, reorganizing everything he thought he knew about his life for the past 5 years. I want a DNA test, he said finally. Rachel nodded, as if she had been expecting exactly that. Of course, I expected you would. When can we do it? Tomorrow, if you want. But Cole, he looked at her. If the test confirms they're your children, you need to decide what that means for you. Because they are not a business problem you can solve by writing a check. What do you mean? I mean that if you enter their lives, you need to stay. You can't just show up when it's convenient and disappear when it gets complicated. They're not a project you can delegate or an acquisition you can sell if it doesn't turn a profit. Cole was silent, absorbing the weight of her words. You learn to stay, Cole, not to invade. They need consistency, not drama. How will I know I can trust you? You don't, just as I don't know if I can trust you. But if they're your children, then we're going to have to find a way to make this work out for them. Cole nodded slowly. The test. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. And with that, Rachel turned and walked to the approaching bus, leaving Cole alone in the parking lot with more questions than answers. The DNA test took 3 days to process, 3 days during which Cole couldn't focus on anything important. He cancelled crucial meetings, postponed decisions affecting millions of dollars, and spent hours staring out his office window, thinking about 4 small boys who might be his children. When Marcus called with the results, Cole knew what the answer would be before he even heard it. Positive, Mr. Richardson. 99.9% certain. All 4 boys are your biological children. Cole hung up the phone and sat in silence for 10 full minutes. He had children. 4 children he had abandoned without even knowing they existed. For the first time in years, Cole Richardson felt completely lost. The next day he returned to Danny's diner. Rachel was leaving work when she saw him waiting, leaning against the limousine. This time she didn't seem surprised. The results are in. It wasn't a question. Yes, she nodded and started walking. Cole followed, matching his pace to hers. Rachel, she stopped and turned to face him. Cole hesitated. Apologizing wasn't something he did often. In fact, it was something he avoided at all costs. I'm sorry. For what, specifically? For leaving that morning. For not leaving a way to contact me. For not knowing they existed. Rachel studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine if he was being sincere. Do you really mean it? Or are you just saying what you think you should say? The question caught him completely off guard. Cole always said what people wanted to hear when it was convenient for business. It was a skill he had perfected over the years, but this time, I do, he said, and realized with surprise that it was true. Back then, I lived without thinking about the consequences of my actions. Now I think every day about how small I was. Rachel seemed genuinely surprised by his honesty. And what do you intend to do now? I don't know. I never thought I'd be a father. I never planned to be a father. Well, you are. The question is what kind of father you want to be. Cole was silent, trying to process the weight of the responsibility that had just fallen on his shoulders. Do they ask about me? Every single day, Reed draws pictures of what he thinks you're like. Always a tall man in a black suit with a briefcase. Jude invents elaborate stories about where you are and why you can't come see them. It usually involves you saving the world or fighting dragons. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. And the other 2. Toby sets a place for you at the dinner table every night. A plate, a glass, a fork. He says it's for when you get home, Nolan. Nolan's more complicated. He doesn't talk about you, but I catch him looking out the window sometimes, as if he's waiting for someone. The words hit Cole like punches to the gut. They don't even know me. But they want to, desperately. The question is whether you want to know them. What if I don't know how to be a father? No one knows at first, Cole. Not even parents who plan to have children. You learn by doing. You make mistakes and try to fix them. You show up, even when you don't know what you're doing. Cole looked at her. Rachel looked tired, but there was a strength in her that he respected, a determination that reminded him of his own stubbornness. What do they need from me? Rachel considered the question carefully, as if it were the most important one he had asked. They don't need expensive gifts or for you to try to impress them with your money. They don't need you to show up once a month with grandiose, dramatic gestures trying to make up for your absence. So what do they need? Consistency. They need to know you'll be there. Not necessarily every day, but that when you say you'll do something, you'll do it. They need to know they can count on you, that you won't disappear again when things get tough. Cole nodded slowly, absorbing every word. The boys don't need gifts, Cole. They need consistency. Want to be a father. Start on the living room floor. What does that mean? It means you sit on the floor with them, play the games they want to play, listen to the stories they want to tell, eat what they eat, sleep when they sleep. You enter their world. You don't expect them to enter yours. Cole was silent, trying to imagine what it would be like to sit on the floor playing with children. It was an image that didn't fit with anything he knew about himself. I don't know if I know how to do that. Then learn. For them. Cole looked directly into her eyes. When can I meet them? Saturday. Come for dinner. But Cole. Yes? If you do this, you're committing. It's not a test to see if you like being a father. It's not something you can decide you don't want anymore if it gets complicated or inconvenient. They're children, not an experiment. Cole nodded, understanding perfectly what she was saying. I get it. And one last thing. What? They're going to test you. They'll want to see if you'll really stay, if you're reliable. They might not trust you immediately. They might be shy or even a little hostile. You'll have to earn their respect and trust. How? By showing up repeatedly, by being reliable, by being present, even when it's hard. Do you want to be a real father, Cole? Cole looked at her and nodded. I want to try. Saturday then, 6 o'clock. And Cole, yes, don't bring anything expensive. Don't try to impress, just bring yourself. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Cole alone on the sidewalk with the biggest responsibility of his life. He had 4 children, and on Saturday, for the first time, he was going to try to be their father. Saturday arrived faster than Cole expected. He had spent the entire week thinking about what Rachel said. So don't bring anything expensive, just bring yourself. The problem was Cole wasn't sure who himself was without the suits, without the limousine, without all the arsenal he used to impress people. For the first time in years, he was nervous. At 5:30 in the afternoon, Cole looked at himself in the mirror. Dark jeans, light blue shirt, casual shoes. Clothes he rarely wore, and that felt strange on his body. He dismissed his driver and drove to Rachel's apartment. The address led him to a 3-story building in a neighborhood that had definitely seen better days. Peeling paint, rusty staircases, barred windows, and some with plywood instead of glass. Cole parked and sat in the car for 5 minutes, observing the dilapidated building. When he finally rang the doorbell of apartment 2B, he heard an explosion of voices from the other side of the door. It's him! It's him! Mummy, he came. Can I open it? The door opened and Rachel appeared, with Toby clinging to her leg and the other 3 boys squeezed behind her. Hi, she said nervously. Hi, Cole replied, not knowing what to do with his hands. It was Toby who broke the silence. Are you really our daddy? Cole looked at the small boy, with his curious eyes and second-hand clothes. I am, he said, and it was the first time he had admitted it aloud. Toby smiled a wide smile that lit up his entire face. I knew it. I knew you'd come. And before Cole could react, Toby ran and hugged his legs. Cole stood still, not knowing how to react. Then, hesitantly, he placed his hand on the boy's small head. Come in, Rachel said. Dinner's almost ready. Cole entered the apartment and stopped immediately. The place was worse than he had imagined. The space was tiny, only 2 small rooms. The couch was torn, patched with grey duct tape. The television was old, with rabbit ears. The carpet was worn in several areas. What shocked Cole most was the absence of new toys. A cardboard box served as a coffee table, covered with used coloring books and broken crayons. In a corner, a few wheelless cars and armless action figures were organized on a makeshift shelf. Cole felt lost. In meetings, he knew exactly what to do. He dealt with numbers, charts, spreadsheets, logical things, but here, surrounded by 4 children talking at once, he had no idea how to act. Sit here, Toby shouted, pulling Cole to the couch. No, come see my drawing, Reed interrupted. I want to show my car, Nolan added. Can I turn on the TV? Jude asked. Cole looked from one child to another, feeling irritation grow. It was like a meeting where everyone spoke out of turn. One at a time, he said, his voice coming out dry. The children stopped and looked at him in confused. Can you help me with this puzzle? Toby asked, offering a dented box. Cole looked at the box. It was second-hand house with tape on the edges. When Toby opened it, several pieces were missing. I don't do puzzles, he said dryly, and this one is incomplete. We pretend the missing pieces are there, Toby said cheerfully. Cole didn't see how an incomplete puzzle could work. It was like analyzing data with missing information. Tiger may sit on the floor with me, Toby insisted. Cole looked at the stained, dirty carpet. Can't I sit on the chair? But the floor is where we play. Cole sighed and awkwardly lowered himself to the carpet, trying to avoid the stains. Now you look for the edges first, Toby explained. Cole picked up a bent piece and examined it as if it were a faulty spreadsheet. So and where does this fit? He asked, forcing the piece into the wrong spot. Not there, Toby laughed. You have to look at the picture. What picture? Half the pieces are missing. We use our imagination, Cole paused. Imagination wasn't something he knew how to calculate. His mind worked with concrete data. Gus, how do you use imagination to fill in missing data? He asked seriously. Toby looked at him as if he had asked how to breathe. You just imagine. How long will this take? Cole asked, impatient. We play until we're done. Play until we're done. Made no sense to Cole. Everything in his life had a schedule and goals. Fahad, you know how to play video games? Jude asked, interrupting. Cole stood up, relieved. No. And I don't see the practical application of it. It doesn't need to have an application, Jude frowned. It's fun. Fun isn't measurable, Cole said. Cole looked at the old television. You play on this thing. It's a TV, Jude said. And the PlayStation 2 works. Cole watched Jude connect old cables. The console was second-hand ice with scratches and duct tape. I can teach you, Jude insisted. Cole looked at the sticky controller with loose buttons. I work with complex analyses, not random button mashing. The words came out harsher than he intended. The children stopped smiling. Nolan, playing with broken cars, suddenly laughed. Daddy doesn't know how to play, he said, finding it amusing. The others laughed too, with typical childlike innocence. You're funny, Daddy, Toby said, laughing. Cole felt his face flush. He wasn't used to being the object of amusement. I know how to do other things, he said dryly. Like what? Jude asked, laughing. Financial analyses, market projections, portfolio management. The children laughed even more, as if these words were hilarious. Rachel appeared at the kitchen entrance. Cole, she said calmly. Can I talk to you? Cole followed her into the tiny kitchen, embarrassed. They're laughing at me, Cole said immediately. They're children, Rachel replied. They're not being malicious. They just find it funny that an adult doesn't know how to do things they do every day. I know how to do important things. Of course you do. But here, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you try to connect with them. My brain doesn't work that way. I work with data, with logic. Playing is chaotic. Then learn to deal with chaos. They're trying to teach you. Cole sighed, frustrated. I never had to learn these things. My life has always been structured. Now's your chance to learn something new. Go back out there and let them teach you. Cole returned to the living room, where he found 4 boys still giggling quietly. Daddy's back, Toby shouted. Do you want to try again? Try what? Play, they all said, laughing. Cole forced himself to sit on the floor again. Okay, teach me. For the next hour, Cole tried to learn to play, and it was a disaster. In the video game, he analyzed each turn like a math problem, constantly crashing the car. No, Daddy, Jude laughed. You don't have to think so much, just feel it. Feeling is not a valid method, Cole retorted, crashing again. But it's fun. I don't see the logic. With the puzzle, Cole grew impatient with the missing pieces. How can I complete this if the data is incomplete? You don't complete it, Toby explained. You just play. Playing without a goal makes no sense. It doesn't have to make sense, Nolan laughed. It just has to be fun. When Nolan brought his broken cars, Cole was uncomfortable. This one doesn't have a wheel, he pointed out. We pretend it does, Nolan explained. But it doesn't. How do you pretend something exists that doesn't? You just go vroom vroom. That's not based on facts. The children laughed so hard that Toby fell onto the carpet. Daddy's weird, Toby said, climbing onto Cole's lap. Cole stiffened, not knowing what to do. You can hug me, Toby said. I won't break. Very slowly, Cole lowered his arms around Toby. You're warm, Toby observed. It was then that Reed approached hesitantly. Do you want to see my drawing? He asked quietly. Reed handed him a yellowish paper. It was a simple drawing, 4 boys and a tall man playing, all smiling. The proportion is correct, Cole said, analyzing it like a graph. Reed frowned. How did you like it? It's technically competent, Cole replied. But did you like it? Cole paused. Liking wasn't an evaluation he usually made. Yes, I liked it. Reed smiled. You can keep it. Cole folded the paper and put it in his pocket. Dinner, Rachel called. The table was tiny, they squeezed to fit 5 people. Rachel served simple stew with bread. Do you like homemade food? Jude asked. I mostly eat at restaurants, Cole admitted. Every day. It's more efficient. During dinner, the questions continued. Do you live in a big house? Nolan asked. In an apartment, Cole replied. How many bedrooms? 3, but I only use 1. What are the others for? Cole had no logical answer. Are there extra space? Do you have toys? Nolan asked. No. Why not? There's no practical application in my routine. You never play? Toby asked. No. That's weird, Reed said quietly. Why is it weird? Because playing is fun. If you don't play, how do you have fun? The question hit Cole unexpectedly. When was the last time he had fun? I get satisfaction when I close a deal, he said, but the words sounded hollow. Does that make you as happy as playing? Jude asked. Cole thought. The satisfaction was momentary, always followed by the need for the next deal. It's different, he admitted. After dinner, it was bedtime. Can you read to us? Toby asked. I have no experience with children's literature. It's just like reading anything, Jude said. Only you do different voices. Different voices? For the characters, the dragon has a deep voice, the princess has a high voice. Cole found himself on the edge of a small bed, with 4 boys around him trying to read about a dragon who couldn't breathe fire. When he tried to do a deep voice, only his normal lower voice came out. Deeper, Toby laughed. I have no parameters for deeper E. Like this. Jude demonstrated a low voice. Cole tried to imitate and failed, producing a strange sound that made the children laugh. Daddy can't do voices. Nolan laughed. Different voices are not in my skill set, Cole said, frustrated. Try again, they all pleaded. Cole tried again, managing something vaguely similar. The children applauded. When he finished the story, Toby was almost asleep. Good night, Daddy, he murmured. Good night, Toby. One by one, they said goodbye. Nolan was the last. Hesitantly, he leaned his face against Cole's arm, a simple but affectionate gesture. Cole looked at the child who was seeking comfort in him and felt something break and rebuild in his chest. Cole and Rachel stood in the living room, in the sudden silence. How was it? She asked. Complicated, Cole admitted. They laughed at me all night. Not at you. At the situation, it's different. They had fun, and you, Cole thought. It had been frustrating, confusing, out of his comfort zone, but when Toby had snuggled into his lap, when Reed had given him the drawing, when Nolan had leaned his face against his arm, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced, he admitted. Want to come back? Cole looked around the small, precarious living room, thought about the laughter, his complete ineptitude. Yes, he said, surprised. I want to come back. Why? Because they laughed, but they didn't give up on me. They kept trying to teach me. Rachel smiled, a short, quiet, but sincere smile. It was the smile of a mother seeing her children happy. For the first time in his life, Cole understood that there was something more important than being efficient. There was being accepted, even when being completely awkward. For the first time, the boys had something Rachel didn't know how to explain: expectation. Expectation that someone would return, even if lost in their world, and that was more important than any competence. The Tuesday morning began like any other. Cole arrived at the office at 7 in the morning, as always, with his cup of coffee and his perfectly organized daily agenda. But at 7:15, Sarah appeared in his office with an expression he had never seen before. "Mr. Richardson," she said, and there was something urgent in her voice. "We need to talk, now." Cole looked up from his morning reports. What happened? The federal audit arrived. They're downstairs with warrants, and there's more. The SEC is investigating irregularities in our financial statements from the last quarter. Cole felt his blood run cold. What do you mean, irregularities? Someone reported possible manipulations in the numbers. They're questioning 3 large contracts we closed in the last 6 months. Cole stood up abruptly, knocking over his coffee cup in the process. The dark liquid spread across the papers on his desk, but he didn't even notice. Who made the report? We don't know yet. But Cole, they have documents. A lot of documents. The next 2 hours were a blur of lawyers, auditors, and panicked executives. Cole found himself at the center of a storm that threatened to destroy everything he had built in the last 10 years. By 10 in the morning, it was clear that the situation was much worse than he had imagined. They're questioning $15 million in revenue, David, his lead lawyer, explained in a crowded conference room. And there's evidence that someone from inside the company provided privileged information to the investigators. What does that mean exactly? Cole asked, his voice more controlled than he felt. It means you need to be here, personally, overseeing every move. Any wrong decision now could result in criminal charges. Cole looked at the documents scattered across the table. Numbers, contracts, spreadsheets, his world, the world he knew and dominated, the world that now threatened to swallow him. For how long? He asked. At least a week. Maybe 2. That's if we can resolve it without it turning into a criminal case. Cole closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he was completely focused. Cancel all my appointments for the next few days, he said firmly. Everything, I want no distractions. Of course, Mr. Richardson, Sarah quickly noted. Everything, Sarah. Cancel everything until further notice. On Wednesday morning, Cole was in his 3rd consecutive meeting with auditors when he realized he had completely lost track of time. It was 2 in the afternoon and he hadn't had lunch. He hadn't left the office since Monday night. His world had narrowed to numbers, documents, and crucial decisions. Nothing else existed beyond the crisis that threatened to destroy his company. Mr. Richardson, one of the auditors, a stern, bald man named Morrison, said, Ash, we found more irregularities in the Hartwell Industries contracts. Can you explain why the reported values differ by almost $2 million from the original documents? Cole looked at the piles of papers scattered across the table. This was what mattered. This was what had always mattered. His company, his business, his empire. I'll need to review the original documents, he said mechanically. Of course, but Mr. Richardson, Morrison leaned forward. I want you to understand the gravity of the situation. If we can't explain these discrepancies satisfactorily, it could result in charges of tax fraud. We're talking about possible prison time. The word prison echoed in Cole's mind like a gunshot. Prison meant losing everything. The company, the apartment, his freedom, everything he had worked for. How much time do we have? He asked. To present a full explanation. 48 hours. Cole nodded and dove back into the documents, completely absorbed by the problem at hand. His analytical mind, trained to handle corporate crises, went into survival mode. There was no room for anything else. On Thursday night, Cole was sleeping at his office desk when Sarah woke him. Cole, she said softly, it's 2 in the morning. You need to go home. Cole lifted his head, feeling a pain in his neck. His eyes were dry and red. There were papers stuck to his face. Did I find anything? He asked, disoriented. You found several things. David said the explanation you prepared might be enough to avoid criminal charges, but Cole, you need to sleep, really. Cole looked around the office. It was as if a bomb had exploded. Papers everywhere, open document boxes, empty soda cans and Chinese food containers scattered across the desks. What day is it? He asked. Thursday, almost Friday. Cole nodded vaguely. Weekdays no longer meant anything. There was only the crisis, the documents, the decisions that needed to be made. 2 more hours, he said. Then I'm going home. But he didn't go home. He stayed there, immersed in spreadsheets and contracts, his mind completely consumed by the problem before him. Friday was the longest day of Cole's life. The morning began with an emergency meeting with the board of directors. 12 senior executives sat around an oval table, all looking at him as if he were a criminal. The situation is under control, Cole reported, his voice hoarse with fatigue. We found the discrepancies and have valid explanations for all of them. It was an accounting error, not intentional fraud. And the SEC investigation? Asked Patricia Williams, the board chair. Still ongoing. But our lawyers are confident there will be no formal charges. And how long will this take to be fully resolved? Cole took a deep breath. At least another week. Maybe 2. There were murmurs around the table. Cole could see the concern on their faces. And something else. Distrust. Cole, Patricia said carefully, the board needs to know if you're being completely honest with us about your involvement in these irregularities. The question hit Cole like a punch to the gut. People he had worked with for years were questioning his honesty, his integrity. I did not commit fraud, he said, and his voice came out colder than he intended. And I'm doing everything in my power to resolve this situation. The rest of the day passed in more meetings, more documents, more explanations. Cole was completely immersed in saving his company. It was the only thing that mattered, the only thing he could think about. At 9 in the evening, he was alone in the office, surrounded by piles of documents, when Sarah appeared at the door. Cole, you need to go home. I still have work to do. You've been here for 3 straight days. This isn't healthy. Cole didn't even look up from his papers. My company is being investigated for fraud, Sarah. Healthy isn't a priority right now. Sarah hesitated at the door. Do you want me to reschedule anything for next week? Reschedule what? Well, you had some personal appointments scheduled. I can check. I have no personal appointments, Cole said automatically, without even thinking. Cancel everything that isn't related to the company. Sarah nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Cole returned to the documents, his mind completely focused on the numbers before him, problems to solve, crises to manage. This was what he knew how to do. This was what he had always done. Saturday morning, Cole was in his office at 6 o'clock, reviewing contracts when David arrived. Did you sleep here again? The lawyer asked. A few hours on the couch, Cole replied, without looking up. I found more inconsistencies in the Morrison & Associates contracts. David sat down and began examining the documents. Cole, when was the last time you ate a proper meal or slept in a real bed? Cole stopped writing and looked at David. Why does it matter? Because you look like a zombie, and because making important decisions when you're exhausted isn't smart. I'm fine. This company is my life. Cole nodded. It was true. The company was his life. It always had been. It was all he knew how to do. Let's finish this, he said, returning to the documents. And they worked. All Saturday, all Sunday. Cole lost in the world of numbers and contracts, completely consumed by the crisis that threatened to destroy everything he had worked for. There was no room in his mind for anything else. No time to think about anything other than saving his company. This was how it had always been. This was how he functioned. Meanwhile, across town, on Saturday morning, Rachel woke up to Toby shaking her shoulder. Mummy, Daddy's coming today. Rachel opened her eyes and looked at the alarm clock. 7 in the morning. That's right, she said, sitting up in bed. He's coming today. Can I make him a new drawing? Toby asked, hopping from one foot to the other. Of course you can. In the next few hours, the house transformed into a hurricane of preparation. Reed organized his drawings in order. Jude separated the games he wanted to show Cole. Nolan lined up his cars in a special formation. Toby made 3 different drawings. Rachel prepared lunch, sandwiches and soup, made with care. She even bought soda, an extravagance she normally couldn't afford. Noon came and went. Cole usually showed up around this time. Where is he? Toby asked, glued to the window. He must be on his way, Rachel said. But something was bothering her. Cole had always been punctual. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. The children began to get restless. Mommy, he promised he'd come, Jude said, his voice starting to sound small. Sometimes people can't keep promises, even if they really want to, Rachel replied, trying to keep her voice calm. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Isn't he coming today? Toby asked, tears starting to form in his eyes. Rachel looked at the 4 boys. They were sitting in the living room, surrounded by the toys and drawings they had prepared. The table was set. The soda was warm, and Cole wasn't there. Maybe he had to work, she said carefully. But he promised he'd come, Reed said quietly. Sometimes people can't keep promises, even if they really want to, Rachel explained, trying to keep her voice calm. But inside she felt a familiar ache growing, the pain of waiting for someone who doesn't show up. The pain of trusting and being disappointed. Will he come back another day? Nolan asked. Rachel looked at her quietest son, saw the hope in his eyes, and felt her heart break. He had to resolve a problem, she said carefully. I don't know if he'll come back either. And then, softer, whispering up, I hope so. Sunday was worse. The children woke up asking if Cole would come that day. Rachel explained he wouldn't, but she could see the confusion on their small faces. Toby stayed glued to the window almost all day, waiting to see a black limousine appear on the street. Maybe he's sick, he suggested hopefully. Maybe, Rachel agreed, but she knew it wasn't true. Jude was quieter than usual. He, who always chatted about everything, spent the day almost in silence, just observing. Nolan started drawing. Not his usual drawings of cars and toys, but strange, dark drawings. Lonely figures, houses without windows, dark skies. And Reed did something that broke Rachel's heart. He started putting away the toys. Methodically, carefully, Reed collected all the toys that had been left scattered around the living room for Cole's visit. The cars went back into the box. The drawings were stacked in a drawer. The games were put away. Why are you putting everything away? Rachel asked. Reed didn't answer immediately. He continued organizing, as if trying to erase any evidence that they had waited for someone. Reed? If he's not coming, Reed finally said, his voice small and careful, then we don't need to keep things tidy for him. Rachel felt tears sting her eyes. Reed, at 4 years old, was protecting himself in the only way he knew how, by removing all expectations. Monday arrived grey and cold. Rachel took the children to daycare and went to work at the diner, but her mind was elsewhere. Cole had disappeared, exactly like 5 years ago. He had been there one day and vanished the next. The difference was that now he hadn't just disappeared from her life. He had disappeared from the lives of 4 children who had begun to believe they finally had a father. Rachel finished her shift and went to pick up the children from daycare. On the way home, Toby asked if Cole would be waiting when they arrived. No, Rachel said gently. He's not. Tomorrow? I don't know, honey. I really don't know. And for the first time since Cole had reappeared in their lives, Rachel began to wonder if it had been a mistake to let the children get close to him, because now they knew what it was like to have a father, and now they knew what it was like to lose him. That night, as she put 4 boys to sleep, each quieter than usual, Rachel made a silent promise. If Cole returned, if he had an explanation, if he wanted to try again, she would let him. But if he tried to disappear again, she would do everything in her power to protect her children, because they didn't deserve to go through the pain of being abandoned twice by the same man. She wouldn't let that happen. But sitting alone in the small living room, surrounded by the toys Reed had so carefully put away, Rachel admitted to herself a truth she didn't want to face. She wanted him back. Despite everything, she truly hoped he would. Does Cole parked in front of Rachel's building on a Thursday afternoon, almost 2 weeks after he had disappeared without explanation. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel, not from nervousness, but from pure exhaustion. The last 10 days had been a hell of meetings, auditors and lawyers, but finally the crisis was under control. The company was saved. Now he needed to find out if he had lost something else in the process. He climbed the building's rusty stairs, each step echoing in the afternoon silence. When he reached door 2B, he hesitated for a moment before knocking. The door opened and Rachel appeared, with Toby clinging to her leg as always. But this time, when Toby saw him, he didn't run to hug him. Instead, he hid behind his mother. "Hi," Cole said, and his voice came out hoarser than he intended. Rachel looked at him for a long moment, and Cole could see various emotions crossing her face. Relief, anger, tiredness, disappointment. "Hi," she finally replied, but made no move to invite him in. Can I come in? I need to explain what happened." Rachel hesitated, then moved away from the door. "Come in." Cole entered the apartment and immediately noticed the difference. It was the same small, modest place as always, But there was a tension in the air that hadn't existed before. Jude was sitting on the couch, but didn't run to him as he usually did. Reed was in a corner, drawing high, but didn't look up. Nolan was playing with his cars, but with his back to the door. The children were avoiding contact. "Hi, everyone," Cole said, trying to sound casual, but the words came out forced. There were low murmurs in response, but none of the children looked at him directly. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. They were afraid of him, or worse, they no longer trusted him. "Rachel," he said softly, "can I talk to you privately?" Rachel nodded and followed him into the tiny kitchen. "Where were you?" she asked bluntly, once they were alone. "The company... There was a crisis, a federal investigation. SEC audit." Cole ran a hand through his hair, realizing how disheveled he must look after days without proper sleep. "We were on the verge of total collapse. And you couldn't have called, sent a message, anything." Cole opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. How to explain that he simply hadn't thought of it? That when his company was in danger, his brain stopped processing anything else? "I needed to resolve it," he said finally. "I'm the CEO of the company. I've never had to answer to anyone before." The words came out wrong, and he saw Rachel's expression harden. "Answer to," she repeated, her voice dangerously low. "Cole, 4 children were waiting for you. They made drawings, organized toys, spent all day at the window waiting for you to show up. I know, and I'm so sorry. You know," Rachel interrupted him. "You know Toby cried for 3 nights straight. That Reed put all his toys away because he decided you weren't coming back. That Nolan stopped drawing colorful cars and only makes dark drawings now." Each word was like a slap in Cole's face. He had imagined the children would be sad, perhaps disappointed, but he hadn't really thought about the actual impact of his absence. "Rachel, and Jude," she continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. Jude, who never stops talking, was silent for days, because he thought he had done something wrong, that you had left because of him. Cole felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. It wasn't their fault. It would never be their fault. But they don't know that, Cole. They're 4-year-old children. To them, when people disappear without explanation, it's because they did something wrong. Cole leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the weight of his own stupidity. "I didn't think..." "No, you didn't think. And you know why. Because you're not used to having to think about anyone else besides yourself. The accusation hurt because it was true." "You're right," he admitted softly. "I haven't learned to deal with this. My whole life it's just been me and the company. When there's a crisis, I go into survival mode and forget anything else exists." Rachel studied him for a moment. "And what do you expect me to do with that information?" "I promise I won't disappear again," Cole said, and there was an urgency in his voice that surprised even him. "I know I messed up, Rachel. I know I hurt you all, but let me try again, the right way. How do I know you won't disappear in the next crisis? Because now I know what it's like. Now I know what I lose when I do that." Rachel was silent for a long moment, looking at him as if trying to read his soul. "They don't trust you anymore," she finally said. "It will take time to win that back." "I know, I understand. And I don't trust you anymore either, not completely." Cole nodded, swallowing the pain of the words. "What do I need to do?" Rachel sighed. "I don't know, Cole. Show up, I guess, consistently. Prove you're really here." Can I take them out tomorrow? Somewhere simple, just to try again." Rachel hesitated. "They'll want to go. Even hurt, they still want to be with you, but Cole, if you disappoint them again, I won't give a third chance." "Understood." The next morning, Cole appeared at the apartment door at precisely 10 o'clock, dressed casually and without the limousine. He had rented a normal car, a blue sedan that didn't draw attention. When Rachel opened the door, the children were behind her, all dressed to go out, but clearly hesitant. "Hi," Cole said, crouching down to their level. "I thought maybe you'd like to go to the park with me today." Toby hid behind Rachel's leg. Jude looked at him with suspicion. Nolan remained silent. Reed just watched him. "We can bring your cars, Nolan," Cole said gently. "And you can bring your drawings if you want, Reed." "You're not leaving again?" Toby asked, his voice small and uncertain. Cole felt his heart break. "I'm not leaving," he said, looking directly into the boy's eyes. "I promise." "Like you promised to come last Saturday?" Reed asked quietly. Cole closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was an honesty in his voice that hadn't existed before. "You're right. I broke that promise, and I'm sorry, truly sorry, but I'm here now, and I won't break this one." Reed studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, "but if you leave again, I won't make any more drawings for you." "Fair enough," Cole agreed. The park was perfect for a family day out. Spacious and leafy, with a picnic area featuring wooden tables under the shade of ancient oak trees, and an open, grassy space ideal for the children to play freely. Cole had specifically chosen a place that offered both space and tranquility. He had stopped on the way and bought fresh fruit from a local vendor and some simple balls from a department store. At first, the children kept their distance. They explored the space, ran on the grass, but didn't come too close to him. Cole chose one of the picnic tables and just watched, giving them space to feel comfortable again. Slowly, they began to approach. Jude was the first, appearing beside Cole with one of the balls. "Do you know how to play?" he asked hesitantly. "Not very well," Cole admitted. "Can you teach me?" And so it began. Jude taught Cole how to kick the ball properly. Nolan brought his cars and made a track in the sand. Reed sat near Cole and showed him a new drawing, not dark like the ones from the past few days, but not as colorful as the old ones either. Toby was the most cautious, observing from afar as his brothers interacted with Cole. But after an hour, his playful nature overcame his distrust. He ran to the playground equipment and started climbing up and sliding down the slide, laughing loudly. Cole watched him, smiling for the first time in weeks. "Look, Daddy!" Toby shouted from the top of the slide. "Look how brave I am!" And then he slid down too fast, lost his balance on the descent and fell to the ground, scraping his knee. The crying was immediate and loud. Cole instinctively got up to help, but stopped when he saw Nolan approach first. The quietest boy knelt beside his brother and gently touched the scraped knee. "Does it hurt a lot?" Nolan asked softly. "It hurts," Toby sobbed. "My mum always says if you blow on it, it feels better," Nolan said, and began to blow gently on Toby's knee. Cole watched, fascinated, as Nolan comforted his brother with a patience and gentleness that seemed impossible in a 4-year-old child. "Do you want me to tell you a story?" Jude offered, joining his brothers, "to make you forget the pain?" Toby nodded, still sniffling. "Once upon a time," Jude began, his imagination springing back to life, "there was a brave boy who wasn't afraid of any slide. He was so brave that even dragons were scared of him." Cole slowly approached and sat on the grass beside them, pulling a tissue from his pocket to wipe Toby's knee. "Was the brave boy like Toby?" Cole asked, entering the story. "He was exactly like him," Jude said excitedly. "And he had 3 brothers who were superheroes too." Toby stopped crying, interested in the story. Reed moved closer and sat beside Cole. Nolan continued gently blowing on his brother's knee. And for the first time since he had arrived, Cole felt included again. Not like a stranger trying to intrude, but as part of the family. "And then what happened?" Reed asked, a small smile appearing on his face. "Then the 4 superhero brothers decided they needed to eat magical fruit to become even stronger," Jude declared. "Magical fruit?" Toby asked, interested. Cole smiled and pulled out the bag of fruit he had bought. "It just so happens I brought some magical fruit," he said, distributing apples and bananas to the children. "Really?" Toby asked, his eyes sparkling. "Really," Cole confirmed. "But they only work if you believe." For the next hour, they sat on the grass, eating fruit and listening to Jude invent increasingly elaborate stories about the 4 superhero brothers. Cole participated in the narrative, suggested adventures, laughed at Jude's silly jokes. Reed gradually relaxed until he was leaning against Cole's arm while listening to the stories. Nolan shared his cars, letting Cole drive one on the imaginary tracks. Toby completely recovered from his fall, started making funny faces to make everyone laugh, and Cole laughed. genuinely, deeply, in a way he hadn't remembered doing in years. On the other side of the park, Rachel watched from a bench. She had resisted the temptation to join them, knowing they needed this time alone to rebuild trust. But now, seeing Cole sitting on the grass with the 4 children around him, seeing him laugh at Jude's stories and gently help Nolan with the cars, something stirred in her chest. When they finally walked back to her, all dirty from the dirt and smiling, Rachel stood up. "Did you have fun?" she asked. "We ate magical fruit," Toby proudly announced. "And Daddy drove my car on the hardest track," Nolan added. "And he laughed at my stories," Jude said. "All of them." Reed said nothing, but he was holding Cole's hand. Rachel looked at Cole, who was clearly exhausted but genuinely smiling. "How are you?" she asked. "Better," he replied honestly. Much better." Rachel watched the children running ahead of them towards the car, all chattering excitedly about the day. "Maybe," she said carefully. "You're getting it right." Cole looked at her, surprised. "You think?" "I think today you were a real father. You didn't try to impress anyone and you didn't try to buy their forgiveness. You just showed up." "And that means a lot," Cole nodded, feeling something settle into place in his chest. Can I do this again? Come on Saturday, like before." Rachel looked at the children, who had stopped beside the car and were waiting. "They want you to come," she said, "and I think I do too. Even after I messed everything up. Especially after that. Because now I know you can learn, and that you care enough to try again." Cole felt a relief so profound it almost knocked him over. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving me a second chance." "Don't thank me yet," Rachel said, but there was a small smile on her lips. "Thank me when you prove you deserved it." "I'll prove it," Cole promised. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if I have to." And for the first time since he had disappeared, Cole truly believed he could get this right, because now he knew what was at stake, and he knew it was worth fighting for. It was a warm summer evening, 3 months after the day at the park, and Cole was helping put the boys to bed when he realized how even more cramped the small apartment had become. The children were growing, and the already limited space now seemed impossible. Toby and Nolan shared a bed that was too small for 2 boys almost 5 years old. Reed and Jude were in the other bedroom, equally squeezed. Rachel had been sleeping on the living room couch for months, insisting the children needed the bedrooms more than she did. As Cole tried to get Toby to stop kicking Nolan during the bedtime story, he realized the situation was unsustainable. The children needed space to grow, and Rachel deserved so much more than a torn sofa for a bed. After the children finally fell asleep, Cole found Rachel in the kitchen, washing dinner dishes in the tiny sink that barely fit 2 people. "Rachel," he said softly, "can I talk to you?" She turned, drying her hands on a worn dishcloth. "Of course. What is it?" Cole hesitated for a moment, looking around the apartment, the peeling paint on the walls, the leak in the bathroom ceiling she couldn't afford to fix. Then he pulled out a chair for her to sit. "I want to talk about their future." Rachel frowned, a cautious expression appearing on her face. "Future how?" "I want to secure their future," Cole said, choosing his words carefully, "without them having to depend on me, but with the certainty that I'll always be here." "Cole, I don't understand." "They're growing up, Rachel. And this place," he gestured around the tiny apartment, "you all deserve more space. You deserve better." Rachel stiffened immediately. "We're fine here. I know you make do. I know you work miracles with what you have. But what if you didn't have to work miracles? What if you could just live?" Cole stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dimly lit street below. "Every week I come here and I see how you live. 4 children in a space smaller than my living room. You sleeping on the couch. The boys sharing beds that are too small." "Cole, let me finish," he said, turning to face her. "I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because they're my children. And you've done an incredible job raising them alone. But you don't have to keep doing it alone." Rachel remained silent, watching him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Cole took a deep breath and pulled a set of keys from his pocket. "I bought a house for you all," he said simply. Rachel blinked as if she hadn't heard him correctly. "You did what?" "A house, with a yard, And he hesitated, almost shyly. A playroom. For them. Cole, I can't accept. It's not charity, Rachel. It's responsibility. They're my children too, and I want them to have what they deserve. And what do you want in return? The question caught him off guard, but he understood where it came from. Nothing. I want nothing in return. Everyone wants something, Cole. I want them to grow up in a place where they don't have to share a bed. I want you to sleep in a real bedroom, not on a couch. I want Jude, when he tells his stories, to have space to act them out. I want Nolan to have room for all the car tracks he can imagine. Cole sat down again, the keys still in his hand. And I want them, when they remember their childhood, to remember having had space to be children. Rachel was silent, looking at the keys as if they were something dangerous. Where is it? 20 minutes from here. Same school district, same daycare. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, large kitchen, living room. And a yard where they can play without disturbing neighbors. Cole, go see it before you decide, he said, placing the keys on the table between them. Just go see it. If you hate it, we'll forget I ever mentioned it. Rachel picked up the keys slowly. And you, where do you fit into this story? I'll stay in my apartment. I'll keep coming here every week. Nothing changes between us, Rachel. It's just so you all have what you deserve. Rachel looked at the keys in her hand, then at Cole. Why are you doing this? Cole considered the question, remembering the past few months. Because 3 months ago I almost lost the chance to know them. And because every time I come here and see Toby trying to play in a space the size of a closet, or I see you sleeping on the couch because you gave them your room, I remember that I have the resources to change that, and it would be selfish not to do anything. Rachel was silent for a long moment. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. But Cole could see in her eyes that she was already imagining the possibilities. 2 weeks later, Rachel called Cole on a Saturday morning. We want the house, she said bluntly. Cole felt a relief so profound it almost knocked him over. Are you sure? I am. The children saw it and... Cole, I've never seen them so excited. Toby spent the whole week talking about the yard. Nolan measured the playroom 3 times to plan where he'd put his car tracks. Cole smiled. And you? Did you like it? Rachel hesitated. Cole, it's the most beautiful house I've ever seen. I never thought I'd live in a place like that. So it's decided. It's decided. Moving day was chaotic in a completely different way from their usual chaos. Cole had hired a moving company, but there was little to transfer from the small apartment. Most of the furniture was left behind. It was too old or too small, or simply not worth moving. Cole had furnished the new house carefully. Nothing extravagant, but everything new and suitable for a family with 4 small children. Sturdy sofas, a large dining table, individual beds for each child, a luxury they had never experienced. When the children entered the new house for the first time, the reaction was exactly what Cole had expected, and yet so much more than he was prepared to feel. Toby was the first to explore, running from room to room like a small hurricane of energy. Look at this, he shouted, discovering each new space. Mommy, there's a giant kitchen, and look at this yard. We can play ball here, and there are trees, real trees. Jude was fascinated by the spacious living room. I can put on plays here, he announced, already imagining the possibilities. I can make a stage and everything. Nolan went straight to the playroom, an entire room dedicated to them, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, soaking in the infinite possibilities. But it was Reed who impressed Cole the most. The more reserved boy, who always kept his reactions guarded, entered the bedroom he would share only with Jude and simply stopped. His eyes widened in a way Cole had never seen before, as if he were seeing something impossible. Is it mine? He asked softly. Just mine and Jude's. It's yours, Cole confirmed. Reed's eyes truly opened for the first time, not literally, but in the way a child opens their eyes to possibilities they had never imagined. Cole could see the boy already planning where he would put his drawings, where he would organize his art supplies. But it was Nolan who asked the question Cole was not prepared to hear. The quietest boy approached him in the playroom, looking around the space that seemed like an impossible dream. "Is all this ours?" he asked, his voice filled with an almost reverent surprise. Cole looked at Rachel, who was watching everything from the doorway with tears streaming down her face. "It is yours, yes," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. The months that followed were the best of Cole's life. The house transformed into exactly what he had hoped, alive, noisy, filled with laughter and childlike energy. The playroom quickly became the heart of the home, where the children spent hours creating imaginary worlds, and where Cole discovered he could participate in their games without feeling completely lost. He maintained his routine of visiting every week, arriving on Saturday afternoons and staying until Sunday evening. He had dinner with them at the large new kitchen table, fixed broken toys, listened to Jude's increasingly elaborate stories, helped Nolan build car tracks that stretched across the entire playroom. The house had truly become a home. There was laughter echoing through the hallways, toys scattered through the rooms, Reed's drawings taped to the new refrigerator. The yard was always full of activity, Toby practicing soccer, Jude performing plays for an audience of trees. But Cole always returned to his apartment at the end of the weekend. It was on one of those Sunday nights, 3 months after the move, that Nolan asked a question Cole had been avoiding thinking about. They were in the playroom, Cole helping to organize the cars before leaving, when Nolan approached him. "Daddy." "Yes." "Are you going to sleep here someday?" The question was simple, innocent, but it hit Cole like lightning. He stopped organizing the cars and looked at the boy. "Why do you ask?" Because it would be nice if you slept here. Then we could have breakfast together and you could help me build tracks early in the morning." Cole felt something tighten in his chest. The question wasn't just about sleeping in the house. It was about belonging completely to the family. "Maybe," he said carefully, "but even when I don't sleep here, I'll be around." Nolan nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. Later, when the children were in bed and Cole was getting ready to leave, Rachel walked him to the front gate. They stood there for a moment, in the silence of the night, looking at each other. "You did more than you promised," Rachel finally said. Cole shook his head. "I didn't need to promise, I just needed to show up." Rachel took a step closer to him. "Cole." "Yes." She hesitated for a moment, then simply reached out and took his hand. She said nothing, just held it for an instant, her fingers intertwined with his. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It meant gratitude, trust, and perhaps something more. It meant that, despite everything that had happened, she saw in him not just the father of her children, but a man who had learned to put family first. Cole squeezed her hand gently, perfectly understanding what she didn't say. And that was enough. For now, it was more than enough. He had given the family a home. They had given him a purpose. And together, they were building something none of them had imagined possible 6 months ago. A real family. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.